Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. So today I'm delighted to be joined by MJ Buck. Looking forward to our conversation today, MJ.
Me too. Thanks so much for having me on, Simon, for all the work that you're doing with
Thank you.
adoptees.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So MJ's been on before, so a conversation was long overdue. So thank you for getting back in touch. So today we're going to talk about thriving adoptees, as we do on the show. And before we hit record, you said, "Well, I'm not sure I'm there yet." What did you say? I'm
Mhm.
not there yet. What was it that you said?
I I did say that. I think that thriving is an ideal that I think we have. To me, thriving is like, oh, wait, I'm up here. I'm in the stratosphere. I'm doing great. But I think thriving to me is it's a process, it's a good goal to have, but I don't know if I'm actually, if I can say that I'm there 100%, like I'm thriving and this is where I want to be, kind of thing. I'm evolving, I
Yeah.
guess, if that
Are,
makes
are we
sense.
are we setting the bar too high?
That's a really good question. Maybe we are. Maybe we should, and maybe the bar for each of us is a little different, because we're all such unique individuals as people, but also as an adopted individual, where we're all at different places, and the way that we cope with stuff is different. So maybe thriving is, yeah, it's really up to the person to decide how they're thriving, how they want to thrive, what that word means to them.
Yeah. There's so many different places I could go on that one, right? So I'm going to go with my gut instinct, which was a thing I heard from a mentor of mine many years ago. Um, he said something like the biggest goals are the easiest ones to score, right?
Hmm.
So like a big goal would be, if we were talking about running a practice or running or changing the world, right? Or me, right? A big goal for me would be okay. So we've done 500 episodes. We've got like 100 closing on about 110,000 downloads. Or listens, right? So a big goal would be like, okay, we've got to get to a million. We're going to get to a million downloads within the next year, right? That would be what
Mhm.
people would think is, traditionally as a big goal. But he was talking about the biggest goals are the easiest ones to score, right? So you've got a soccer goal. Imagine that
Mhm.
was 5 times bigger.
Mm.
It would be easier. It would be easier to score. So there would be
Mhm.
less involved. There would be
Mhm.
there would be less
Mm.
less involved. It would be easier to hit the goal, and then
Mhm.
wouldn't life be easier
Yeah.
if we weren't setting the bar so high?
I get what you're saying. Yeah, the details, the small things in between the big goals, I think are the
Yeah,
the difficult parts, right?
and I also think this. So the guy that shared that with me is a guy called Richard Wilkins, and his his wife, and they work together, called
Mhm.
Liz Ivory. She says, well, if we're always okay with not feeling okay, we're always okay. If we're
Mm.
not,
Mhm.
if we're okay with not feeling okay,
Mhm.
we're always okay. It's easier if we're saying
Mhm.
we have to feel like we're thriving all the time. We have to be
Mhm.
feeling that we're at the top of our game all the time.
Mhm.
Like we're not setting ourselves up for uh,
Yeah,
we're not
yeah.
setting ourselves up for a happy life because we're always going to be resisting what is.
Yeah, I get that. I think that when I say I don't necessarily feel like I'm thriving, I think that um, like the big goals, I had some big goals last year and I've reached them. I'm there. but that doesn't necessarily cause me to feel like I'm thriving. Like I feel like most days I'm just trying to get through the day, you know, just help me get through the day because um yeah, it's just there's so many different things going on, I think, in my internal landscape that I get caught up in, that causes me to feel like, am I thriving? What's going on? This sense of and I think maybe you had something like we have this ideal what thriving is. Maybe for me, thriving right now is just getting through the end of the damn day, right? Like if I made it through the end of my work day and I made it home and I'm sitting having my
Yeah.
dinner, that was thriving for me in that particular day. So I'm sure other people might not agree with that definition of thriving, but that's where I'm at right now. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. But that takes the pressure off.
Yeah, you're right. It's okay to be where you're at, and I think as adopted individuals, there's we want to heal, right? We hear that word a lot, heal. I'm on this healing journey, and I think that's great. But in my experience, I don't know. I like the word evolve. I don't know if we'll ever reach the point where we feel completely quote unquote healed. To me, it's like this evolution or evolving. I mean, I hope till the day I die, I'm always evolving, that I'm always shifting, that I'm, you know, yeah, growing as an individual, not just emotionally, but in spirit too, soul, spirit, all of that. I've, I feel like, um, yeah, thriving is all of that, growing, not only emotionally getting through, working through trauma, but it's also addressing the soul and the spirit, and how are we integrating all of that? How are we making ourselves or allowing ourselves to feel into that and reach a point where we feel more integrated, if that makes any sense at all.
Uh,
I feel like I was wandering a little bit.
there's a few different bits out there. I think first off, like can spirit grow?
Can spirit grow? Oh, I think so. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think our spirits can grow. I think that we, and I'm getting a little woo woo. Okay, so
Go for
I
it.
think
Go for it.
yeah, we have a soul and we have a spirit. Most of us live on this plane, I think, where we're in this human body, right? We're in this human form, and we're going through life, and we got to do what we need to do. We go into therapy so that we can heal and all of that, and that addresses the emotional, the things that we want to heal from. But I think that there's also maybe that's why adoptees have a more difficult time in this healing process, is that we need to look at also the spirit and the soul. Like, what are we doing? What are the things that we're doing to take care of our spirit and our soul? And what I mean by that, for me, thriving, or one way of thriving, is engaging in the things that I love, like my passions that somehow got really, really suppressed when I was in this very difficult marriage, and some of the other things that have happened in my life. I mean, even the job that I have right now is somewhat, it's very exhausting. And so it tends to, I don't know, crush the spirit is the right word, but there are things that I think that we need to do to take care of our soul and spirit that maybe we don't address in a therapy room, right? When you're sitting across from a therapist, what are the things that bring you passion? Can we bring some restoration in terms of what makes you happy, what makes you grow, not just this heavy, I've got to heal, but what are the glimmers that make you hum during the day? For me, it's creative things, um, writing music, reading about the soul and spirit, things like that. So I don't know. Have I wandered off the path, Simon?
Well, no, it's your path, right? So the conversation goes where it goes. I ask a few questions, and we kind of go where we go in the moment. You know, what I was thinking is you're engaging the sorts of conversation, sorry, the sorts of activities you're talking about there is about engaging right. It's the right hand side of the brain, right?
Yes, the creative side of the
So it's the
brain.
creative
Yeah.
side of the brain,
Hmm.
and is that the part of the brain that is um, more in charge when we're younger, because like
Mm-hmm.
all the left the inner critic. The
Hmm.
inner critic is in the left hand side of the brain,
Hmm.
and there's a particular part of the left hand side of the brain where it sits.
Hmm.
The striver, the inner critic, the comparison, the overthinking, the language center. That's all left brain stuff.
Hmm.
Whereas going with the flow, right hand brain stuff, just like this conversation, right? We're just
Yeah.
going in the flow, and you're chatting away, and then my wife asked me a question, not realizing that I'm on a call, and I don't know, do you know? So, but we're just going with the flow. We're going with the throw. There's not a lot of thought. There's not a lot of
Hmm.
thought going on. So that's what popped into my head when you talked about those sorts of activities. Um, and then there's the I can the spirit grow? Can the spirit be crushed? I mean, I guess it depends what you mean by what we mean by spirit.
Hmm.
So you talked about spirit and soul. Are they interchangeable for you? Are they different things? What do those words mean to you?
I guess it could be in some ways interchangeable. I think that uh, when I think about spirit, I think about who we are at the very essence of ourselves. Like, what does um, what does my spirit want? Like, what I think that things like trauma tend to um, suppress our spirit, right? We forget who we are, especially for adoptees. Like from the very beginning, we're taken away, we're separated from our birth or biological families, and we're placed into a situation that was beyond our control. So that's the kind of the beginning of this um, this dissonance, I guess, within this inner dissonance, for lack of better words, where um, yeah, we from the very beginning we're trying to figure out, I think, who we are, so to speak. And so then we're placed. For me, I was a transracial international adoptee. So my parents were white. I grew up in the South, where I experienced lots of microaggressions, racial discrimination, and so that I think suppresses our spirit, that suppresses who we are, who we're meant to be in some ways. And so for me as a young kid, music was the thing that I gravitated toward. I started playing the piano around the age of 8 or 9. And that was what lifted my spirit. That's what helped give me an identity outside of the physical identity that I was kind of put into, like growing up in a white family, if that makes sense. Um, all of the ties to my cultural roots severed. Didn't know the word birth family until until I started my master's program, quite honestly, because I had no interest, in searching for my birth family or any of that till much later. So yeah, I think going back to what is spirit and all of that, I think that all of us have this desire to be authentic, right? And to know who we are. For adoptees, it gets convoluted, especially transracial adoptees, because of the identity piece. So weaving our way back into what our passions are, who we are at the very essence, I think that that's all contained under the umbrella of spirit.
Yeah.
um yeah.
When you talked about woo woo, you mentioned the word woo woo a couple of minutes
Yeah.
ago, right? We're totally okay with going woo woo, right? An idea came to me because I listened to some stuff that people would consider woo woo. So, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm not sure whether I could out woo woo you or you could out woo woo me, but you know, the thing came to me is that um, a lot of people in that space who have got nothing to do with adoption, have no lived experience of adoption, and are not speaking into adoption either. But they talk about the separate self. They talk about the self. No, they talk about um, spirit. And my favorite teacher would he would say, I don't think he would use the word suppressing our spirit. He would say eclipsing our spirit.
Mm. I love
Um,
that.
yeah, it's kind of it gets in the way of, right. It drowns it out.
Hmm.
It veils it veils who we are, and by the
Hmm.
word it, um, we could talk about trauma veiling our essence.
Hmm.
We could talk about feeling disconnected from ourselves. So we could also talk about um, a, a movement away from the uppercase S self to the lowercase s self. Like
Hmm.
identifying with ego rather than our essence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So they talk about all that stuff in a non-adoptee sense and a non-adoptee context. And and I was an idea I came up with last week was the fact that we do it earlier than most.
Hmm.
Adoptees do it.
Hmm.
Adoptees adoptees' spirit is suppressed
Hmm.
earlier than
Hmm.
other people's, than biologicals.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. You used the word disconnection, I think, and I love the word eclipse too. That I think really beautifully describes how the noise around us kind of dampens our spirit or eclipses our spirit. But yeah, the disconnection happens at birth for some of us, right? We're removed from our birth family, and then for me, I was placed in an orphanage for I don't know, it was a good solid 4 months, I think, before I was adopted. And, for a young infant, 4 months, you may think, oh, that's a short time. That's a long time for a small infant to be separated and to be placed in an orphanage with who knows what kind of care, So I'm speaking to the other adoptees out there too who may have had that experience. So that disconnect and that kind of stays with you. It's pre-verbal traumas, right? It's what we call pre-verbal trauma. But that disconnect, that sense of displacement stays in, it stays in us. I mean, there's research that shows this now, right? This pre-verbal trauma, we call it the primal wound, that kind of thing. But I think it does something to our spirit too. We're kind of displaced in spirit. And then we're placed in this adoptive family and we're expected to behave, assimilate, right, to the dominant culture. And then we get further disconnected, I think, from spirit in some ways. So, it's like this journey of reconnecting back to our spirit, to who we are most authentically. And for some of us, like for me, it's taken forever to get to that place, and I think I'm still on the path, in terms of um, really figuring out who I am, who I want to be, connecting with spirit and soul, my soul's purpose, all of that.
Yeah.
And so, mhm.
As you were talking about the orphanage, what I got was a felt sense of aloneness.
Yeah, very much so. Yes, I think that when I was working with adoptees, I heard that so often, this sense of aloneness, even though and granted, not only adoptees, I'm sure experience this, but for us, it's profound because of um, this separation that we had from the beginning, right? This displacement. But yeah, aloneness. I think I remember feeling that sense of aloneness since from the very beginning, like as far back as I can remember, just always feeling very alone and very separate and very different from the people around me. And so I think it stays with you in some ways. And it's pre-verbal. So as a kid, you don't know how to process that. You just know you're different. You feel different, but you can't quite put your finger on it.
Yeah.
And so you just kind of drift. I think that's how I felt. I was drifting for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This the aloneness, and then the sense of difference and feeling different. And then if I, you talked about the microaggressions, growing up in a predominantly white area. Another thing I've been connecting with that difference thing recently is the fact that when we're bullied,
Mm-hmm.
when human beings are bullied, right? It is often we're bullied on a point of difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, as a white guy growing up in a white area, I got bullied for having buck teeth,
Mm-hmm.
right? I got bullied for going to a different school. It was always about difference. Bullies pick on us for difference, and I've heard a lot of people talking about emotional bullying being actually more traumatic than physical bullying, but if we've already got a sense that we're different, if we already feel different, and then somebody comes along and points out that difference to us, it's going to make us feel even more different. And, like feeling alone and feeling different and lack of connections, these all seem in the same, um, ballpark, to use an American
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
metaphor.
Right. And it causes that, as you referred to earlier, that sense of disconnection, right? Disconnection from yourself, spirit, soul, all of that, but also disconnection with a lack of connection with other people, right? That attachment kind of wounding, it just leaves a big vacuum. And as a kid, you don't necessarily know what that is, right? You just feel this sense of unbelongingness, if that's even a word, which it causes this eclipse of the soul, as your friend was referring to. So this lack of wholeness or integration that I think that we for me, thriving would be restoring that, or one part of thriving would be restoring that sense of fragmentation that's caused, and becoming more whole, more integrated, soul, spirit, mind, body, all of that
Yeah.
connection. And I think it starts with us. Like, I think for many of us, we look for that connection with other people, especially if you're attachment wounded. Sometimes we look for others to fill that part of us. And often at an unconscious level, like I need to be in a relationship, when really we have to do that work internally ourselves before we can connect in a deeper way with somebody else.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. Yeah.
Isn't this a seeing thing, though?
Say that again.
Isn't this a seeing thing, like seeing our wholeness?
Mm, seeing our wholeness. Can you tell me more about that? Like seeing,
Well, it's something that we see rather than something that we do.
oh, I see what you mean. Um, that's a good question. Seeing if we see it, I think that eventually we have capacity to see it. For me, it's more of a felt thing, like in my body. Um, it's more feeling it. Like I'm less, for example, maybe triggered by something. It feels less vivid. We were kind of talking about this before we started. To me, the feeling or the sense of being more integrated is in the body. Like I feel more regulated, or let me put it this way, I feel less dysregulated by things that would have caused a big visceral response in my body. Like I can sit in that place of discomfort, or maybe a memory gets triggered, but I can sit in it longer and without being so dysregulated than maybe at an earlier time, if that makes sense. So yeah, for me, it's not only seeing it, but it's feeling it. It's a sense of embodiment, um, a sense of connection with myself, my spirit, soul, mind, body, all of that. It's like putting the pieces together, and they may not always fit. Like, who of us is perfect, right? We're not always 100% feeling on or feeling fully integrated or fully regulated. But it is this process of getting to a place where it's like, I give less of a fuck, for better lack of better words. You know what I mean? Like it's just a place where I let things roll off my back easier, I guess, and feel a sense of power within. That it's not something external is not controlling me. I'm in control of me, and that to me is empowering. That's to me is a more integrated sense of myself and my spirit.
Do you feel whole when you're doing those activities that you were talking about?
Oh yeah, for sure. That's probably the place that feels most safe to me is music. I mean, it always has been music, art, whether it's writing or drawing. Um, those spaces are really safe. And I think in many ways, sometimes I feel more connected to those things than human beings. Um, but yes, those activities tend to get me in a place where um yeah, I feel whole. It's like that's kind of who I am. That defines music, and the creative arts define who I am. And I'm so glad that I can see that now. As a kid, I didn't realize how important music and creativity would be to me, but that's the essence of who I am. And that's, I think, how I will continue to evolve, is putting myself in places where I can engage in that kind of thing. And so to me, for anyone who's on this evolution or healing path, finding the things that help you feel authentic, or discovering what helps you feel authentic, is what will help you feel like you're connecting with your spirit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So is it a feeling that comes and goes?
It is, yeah, yeah. At work, I would say I very rarely feel that connection, because I'm focused, I'm concentrating, and it's work. It's not, it's work. For those people who work in the area that they want to work in, and they're able to live out those passions, kudos to them. Some of us have to do work because we need to make a living, right? And it's not maybe our first choice, but it gives me a paycheck, right? And we all have to make a living. So I mean, there are part I shouldn't it sounds really harsh. There are parts of my job that I enjoy, and there are other parts that I don't, that are I think more than anything, being in a helping profession takes, for me, it takes a lot of my energy. It takes a lot of the life force out of me. So I have to find ways to restore back to my spirit. And that is things like listening to music, engaging in music, drawing, writing. For a year while I was going through my divorce, I wrote a lot of shitty poetry. And it's not the greatest poetry, but it really helped me process what I was feeling, and process this disconnect that I had internally. It helped me put the pieces back together, so to speak. So yeah, that's
That doesn't sound like shitty poetry to me.
well, if you're a professional writer, it might, but for me, yeah, it was very therapeutic, very much part of my
That's the
process of
opposite of
seeing.
shitty. That's
Thank you. I totally appreciate that. I do. Yeah, yeah. So,
I'm just getting I'm sensing that we're going back to the start of the conversation, that we're setting the bar
mm,
too high.
mm,
If the poetry did it for you, it did
hmm
it for you, and it was definitely not shitty.
yeah, yeah, you're right. That's true. Setting the bar too high. Mhm.
And what were you doing the poetry for? You were doing the poetry
Uh,
to let some stuff
yeah.
vent, presumably, or
Hmm.
to express what's on the inside, outside. I don't know what were you doing? What was the purpose of the poetry?
The poetry.
Well, there isn't a purpose to
It's
poetry. There isn't.
they're really, it's
Isn't.
so wild because I love writing. I've always loved writing. I wrote this memoir, which would be totally different to be a different story now because of this process of evolution that I've been through over the last year and a half. But I wrote it, it just happened. I didn't set out to write
No.
poetry. I think the poetry wanted me to write to write it, if that makes any sense at all. It was speaking to me. I felt called to write it and it just
That can't be
flowed.
shitty then. I'm
Well,
not.
you
I'm
can
not.
read it and then tell me. But no, you're right. You're absolutely right. If anything, I think is part of somebody's attempt to reconnect to themselves, to their soul, to their spirit, then yeah, you're right. It's not shitty. It's a glimmer. It gives, yeah, it gives you hope. It's something
Yeah.
to sink your teeth in that will help you evolve and get to a higher place. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you see a distinction between seeing your spirit and connecting with your spirit? Do they do they
Seeing
both?
your,
Yeah. Do they
yeah,
feel different? Do they feel different to you? Do they?
a little A little bit, because when I think of seeing, I think of visually. Like in my head, when you said seeing your spirit, I'm thinking, do I see my spirit physically? No, I don't see my spirit physically, but I feel it. I can feel it. It's more of this embodiment of who I am at my very essence. Like even maybe the parts of me that other people can't see. The really true MJ. Who is that person? That to me, that's that spirit. And yeah, it's more of a feeling internally,
Yeah.
the sense in my body. Hmm.
Yeah. Well, and we can't see it because it's not a thing.
Yes, we can't see it physically, but I think that some of us can feel it. We get to, and I realize that some people may think this is way the heck out there and woo woo and all of that, but I do think that um, at that level, we're getting in touch with something we can't, that may not be tangible like physically. It's more this internal sense of
Yeah.
who I am at my very core, who I'm meant to be, who I'm maybe evolving to be. So I think our spirit is always evolving. So yeah.
Ah, okay. I think we've got spirit slightly different. Different.
What is your idea of spirit? What is spirit to you?
Well, my idea of spirit and the word I would normally use for it is consciousness,
Mm,
and that cannot be. Um, it can be eclipsed, but it can never be crushed. You talked about
mm,
crushing spirit, like so. I wouldn't think that consciousness can't be crushed. Consciousness can't be crushed. Can't consciousness can't be diminished. It can't grow. It doesn't change. It's the uh, unchangeable essence of who we are. It's always there, and it's sometimes eclipsed, and it's
mm,
eclipsed to a different to different layers.
mhm,
So I would be talking about if it's a light bulb, okay. If it's a light bulb, it's always on. There's no on off switch, right?
mm,
There's
mhm,
there's no there's no dimmer switch on it.
mhm,
It's always giving you, whatever. Is it lumens? I think the lumens is the
mhm,
word that people is the measure for the brightness, right? So it's always at 1,000 lumens or whatever that is. um, and it is veiled, and sometimes it's veiled. So sometimes it might there might be 10,000 veils, and sometimes there's no veil at all.
Hmm.
So it never changes. It's
Hmm.
just the degree to which it's eclipsed. It's the degree to
Hmm.
which it's veiled. It's it's endarkened. We're searching for enlightenment. We don't need to search for enlightenment. We need to see ourselves and feel, I'm with you, right, on that. We need to feel ourselves as the light that has been endarkened.
Mm-hmm. I think I see where you're coming from. Yeah, yeah, I think that spirit to me is I think it can evolve and change.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that because as we grow as humans, I think that our experiences, our life experiences, the knowledge we gain, all of those things can expand our spirit. So maybe I'm thinking of our spirit can become more expansive in some ways as we gain knowledge, wisdom, life experience, all of those things, and try to make sense of our stories. So I don't know. I think when I think of spirit too, when I was talking about spirit being crushed and using that ideal, I think that we can, as human beings, get to a point where um, what was the word you used earlier? I can't remember, but this sense of desperation, and maybe that's the way I'm thinking of a word that's deeper than that, where we're depression. I mean, some people get to the point where they experience such depression that that they can't function. It's very hard for them to function. So to me, that speaks of if we're looking at a therapeutic point of view, I mean, that person probably needs therapy and they need medication, maybe psychotic, yeah, antipsychotic medications and things to help them get through that. But I think also the thing that we don't look at is the spirit. Like, I don't talk about spirit in my therapy sessions. People would think I'm crazy, but I think that there is something about restoring a sense of spirit, is restoring a sense of who we are. I get it. The idea of consciousness that you were talking about, the light's always on, and sometimes the consciousness gets eclipsed. So I mean, that does make sense to me, but I think that in some ways our spirit can evolve and that we can change. We can change the direction that we go in. Our spirit can evolve, we can expand, we can grow, if we want to. Not everybody wants to, I think, is the thing. Not everybody is in touch with that part of themselves. And so I think for some people, maybe they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that kind of work. And for others of us, we're kind of, I don't know, we're on this journey where we want to connect more deeply with spirit. And that for me, doing that has been part of my own evolving, my own healing process. It's not for everybody. I guess I should say that maybe some people out there think this is a little too woo-woo for them or not within their grasp. And so but for me, I see even the people that I work with, people who come see me, I see that there's a spirit in there. What can we do to not only heal you emotionally or help you feel better emotionally, physically, all that, but what can we do to help your spirit evolve as well?
Yeah.
To me, it's just so interconnected.
Yeah. Have you heard the term uh, psycho-spiritual?
Psycho spiritual, I don't think I have, but it kind of makes sense. Is that what we're talking about here to you?
Well, a little bit. Most psychological approaches are that they're psychological. They're to do with
Mm-hmm.
our emotions and our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas psycho-spiritual is to do with our thoughts and feelings and to do with our essence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense to me. Maybe that's why I'm so attracted to music, because I think music in so many ways touches us at a very I don't know, very it's very raw. I think music can be very raw. And so it touches us in ways that maybe talk therapy can't, like sound medicine, sound healing, vibration, sound energy, all of those things, energy work can get to us at a different level than, say, talk therapy. In my opinion, talk therapy only goes so far, and I'm a therapist. But I think that, if you've experienced complex trauma or any kind of trauma in your life, talk therapy will help you, right, process some of that. But I think we need other ways of healing and evolving besides talk
Yeah.
therapy.
Well,
Um,
we say it a lot on Thriving Adoptees that
mhm.
talk therapy can't touch pre-verbal trauma.
Yeah, right, right.
Because
Yeah,
if it's
yes,
pre-verbal, you don't have words for it.
right.
You
That's
don't have
right.
words for it.
So other things, I mean, I know there's a adoptee therapist, Nicole Rademacher, we were talking about here. She's an art therapist, so she uses art to help people discover more about themselves, explore, evolve, all of that. I think I'm a board certified music therapist in addition to being an LCSW. So I use the creative arts and expressive arts too, singing bowls, things like that, chimes, that kind of work to help people heal in that way
Yeah.
as well as talk therapy.
So, what do you think gets in the way of us thriving?
That's a really good question. I thought about that. I'm like, Simon's going to ask me that question. Well, I think a lot of times what gets in the way of us healing. Um, for I'm going to speak for myself personally. What's gotten in the way for me many years is this people pleasing, saying yes a lot to other people. And as an attempt to fit in, I want to say that from a very young age, I became this people pleaser, like almost too nice, too kind. Oh, MJ, she's so sweet. She's so this and that. I hate that word sweet, quite honestly, now. Um, but saying yes a lot to people, I think even at work, like I tend to say, I have said yes a lot, and it leads to burnout. And so I'm learning how to say no, to put this little protective bubble around me. I'm learning that in the past, I said yes a lot to please other people, to be accepted, to get past that sense of disconnection and past the loneliness, all of that. But it really didn't help, right? It just made me tired, and I didn't necessarily feel more connected to people when I said yes. So um, yeah, that's gotten me into a lot of trouble over the years, just being a people pleaser, not using my voice. Well, I think as a very young person, I didn't have a voice. I was the quiet kid in the back of the room, the quiet young adult who never spoke up. And so it's taken me a long time, I think, to feel comfortable in my own skin and learn how to say no, but put up those boundaries, protect my own energy, if you will.
Have you got a sense of when you saw that, or where when that changed for you? A moment when that changed for you?
When that changed for me, I think it's been a very, very slow process. I think getting into therapy helped. I have a wonderful therapist who's helped me see a lot of things that I didn't see. When I went into this profession of therapy, I thought I was fine. I'm healed. I want to do this work. I want to help other adoptees. But when I began working with adoptees, it really led me to see that there was a lot of work I still needed to do myself. There were things that I missed. Part of it also was being in a very, very difficult marriage, where I said yes a lot. And there's a whole story I won't get into with that, with the marriage and the divorce and all of that. But I think maybe when I decided to get a divorce, that's one of the first ways of me saying, no, I'm not going to do this any longer. So it's taken a very long time, I think, for me to get to that point. It's been happening slowly, I would say, but stepping out of my marriage, I think, was the biggest, the biggest, the biggest event where that led me to say no, to put this boundary. I'm not taking this anymore. Kind of uh, grounding, I guess. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, for some of us it's just I think again that idea of healing, that we have to arrive someplace. I'm not sure we quite arrive. We're always evolving. I still feel very much a year post divorce, and I'm evolving. I'm discovering who I am, and um, learning to thrive. I guess finding ways to thrive and to find those glimmers. Um, it really is a process, and it's so different for each of us as adopted people.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, you feel whole in those moments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are definitely moments when I feel whole, when I feel more integrated. Um, I think one of the other thing I would say that gets in the way of our healing is grief. Many of us experience this grief and loss, right? The ambiguous loss, or the um, oh, I can't remember. I'm having a mind blank. Disenfranchise loss. All of that, I think, is at the forefront of our stories. Um, and so learning how to get through that um, can hinder our growth or hinder our ability to thrive. So it's really important that we find ways to cope with our grief. So for me, um, even though I experienced a divorce and it was a healthy thing, I moved in the right direction, it's still loss. And so there are moments where I don't feel whole because I'm grieving, right? I'm grieving the things that I left behind. Um, and so that, I think, can get in the way. I had someone tell me the other day um, that I had this victim mindset. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, maybe I do. Maybe I am being a victim in my own situation here. And I just can't see it. And then I think one day my therapist said, oh, you're catastrophizing. And I'm like, well, no shit. Yeah, I know I'm catastrophizing, but that's just kind of where I'm at right now. So yeah, there are moments where it's really, things hit hard and they just kind of come up. And I think in many ways we move with the trauma. We don't necessarily move through it. We just move with it. Like I accept that I'm not where I want to be at this moment. I accept that I'm having a hard moment. I'm catastrophizing or whatever the hell I'm doing. And I'm okay with that. Like you were saying, lowering the bar, the expectation that I need to be healed by this point. Oh, you need to get on with it. You need to get on with your life. Well, no, that's not where I'm at today in this moment. Other days, yeah, I feel like, yeah, man, I've made so much progress. Look at where I am now. But then something will come in and it knocks me off of my feet. So yeah, it's really a process, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we wrap up? Because that feels like a good place to stop to me.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Thanks for letting me talk about all of this stuff, the spirit and the soul and evolving and all of that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. What would you like to call this episode?
What would I like to call it? Ooh, gosh, that's putting me on the spot. Um, hmm. I am the worst people at coming up with names and titles and all of that. I don't have um that depth of creativity, I guess, but maybe um spirit living. Spirit thriving, spirit living, something around spirit, maybe. It's funny because I started this group empowerment drumming at my work. Um, using the drum for therapy, for healing, and it's called spirit rhythm. So maybe spirit rhythm, maybe that would be, seems to be a theme in my life right now, is the rhythm of spirit.
Yeah.
Thanks, Simon.
Thanks, MJ. Thanks, listeners. We'll speak to you again very soon. Take care.